Fill to capacity. Crazy good stories and timely topics. Podcast for people too stubborn to quit and too creative not to make a difference. Inspiring, irreverent, and informative. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Pat Benincasa, and welcome to Fill to Capacity. Today's episode, Bees and Veterans, a remarkable story of hives, honey, and duty. Before I introduce my guests, I'd like to give just a bit of context here. University of Minnesota has had an internationally recognized research, teaching, and outreach honeybee program since 1918 called the Spivak Lab. And they have an incredible bee squad outreach that has many programs that include mentoring and teaching young and old, citizen scientists, bee exchange, and beekeeping help for residents. And of course, that brings me to Bee Veterans Program. The Bee Veterans Program is a partnership of the U of M Bee Squad and the Metropolitan Airports Commission. The Bee Veteran Apiaries are located at the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport and in Rochester, Minnesota. So now to my three guests. They are Bee Veteran Program instructors, Ben Ziegler, Jessica Helgen, and Joshua Munoz. Ben Ziegler, through his gardening and habitat restoration, became interested in helping pollinators. He transitioned from the Air Force in 2012 and works with the Spivak Honeybee Lab, the Bee Squad, and Bee Veterans Program in research and bee and plant maintenance. Jessica Helgen manages colonies and collects hive data for the Bee Squad Bee Network program. She is the coordinator and primary instructor for the mentoring apiary workshops. Jessica has been keeping bees since 2005 and has worked for the Bee Squad since 2010. And Joshua Munoz transitioned from the Marine Corps in 2014. He graduated from the University of Minnesota with a bachelor's in agriculture, communications, and marketing, and a master's in agriculture education. He is an agricultural teacher at Como Park Senior High School in St. Paul, and Joshua has been working with the Bee Squad since 2018. Well, welcome all of you. I am delighted to have you here today.
Thanks for having us on.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So with all that said and the background that I gave, can you just tell us, how did the Bee Veterans Program start? What does it do? How does it work? Who would like to jump in?
Well, I can jump in with how it started. It started a few years ago, actually. There was another person who worked for the Bee Squad, Becky Masterman, who started this program, who was really interested in providing a space for veterans to learn beekeeping. We had a couple veterans who took the first classes, Christian Dom and then Keith Johnson, who were really successful at it. And so since then, it's kind of changed shape over time. We went virtual during the pandemic. We're back in person now. It's kept going since then.
Nice. And Joshua, before we went on the air, you mentioned that the program has gone through several changes in the past year or so.
Yeah, I feel like the program, we just have to go with situations, right, and adapt and overcome. And that's the thing. When COVID happened, we wanted to keep the program going. We have that flow, and we want to keep it going. So using technologies like Zoom really enabled us to keep that program going. It was a little different. It's always best to have in person, almost with anything. But knowing that we had this technology, we could reach out to more people. I think we definitely learned how we can use these technologies to benefit a
Great.
program.
Well, I got to fess up here. The world of bees is a bit new to me. And I have to ask, what is the difference between a hive, a colony, and an apiary?
Hive is the structure. Colony comprised of all the insects within the hive, which is the queen, the worker bees, and the drone bees. And apiary is the location.
Okay, from everything I have read about beekeepers, they are absolutely smitten with bees. My question for each of you is this: what brought bees into your life?
Well, I've always been somebody who kind of look out for opportunities. So I remember transferring out of the Marine Corps. How I approached my education was opportunities, and in Minnesota, it's just a big agriculture state. So I wanted to get into agriculture in some way or form. I met Becky Masterman, who's one of the first who started the program, at an internship that I was in while I was an undergrad. I was interning at an industrial hemp farm in Hastings, and she walks in just out of nowhere. I think John, he's the farmer over there, and he said, "Oh, we got somebody from the University of Minnesota Bee Squad coming in, checking out what we can do here, the industrial hemp and honeybees." I'm like, "Okay, all right, sounds good." But that's when I met her, and she learned that I was a veteran and invited me to be a participant in the program. So I started out in 2018 as a participant first.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how I kind of connected. And the first time I got into a hive, I was hooked. So I was working at another lab, literally walking distance away from the bee lab. I was working at a corn lab, very different agriculture sectors for real. So, but it was an easy transition for me to go from lab to lab. So, but it all kind of weirdly fell into place. I don't
Hmm.
know. I'm not sure how to explain, but it just fell into place. And I'm still I'm helping instruct the program, and I'm still doing it until this day.
Great. Ben, how about you?
I was doing my bachelor's degree at the U of M for plant science, and because I was plant science, I wanted to be kind of everywhere that I could. I wanted to be like kind of an all-around player. So I got minors in horticulture, entomology, and urban forestry as well. And during my entomology, it was like last semester of my degree, I took a class with Marla Spivak, and just talking to her through the class, she was kind of wondering who here has any interest in beekeeping. And I think I was the only person who said, honeybees do sound pretty interesting. And all of those aspects of my education, they all have their hands sharing the same pot, kind of. So because I kind of wanted to be everywhere in the natural world, bees are just happened to where I fell when Marla said, we need some help this summer. Do you want to come aboard? So that's where I started.
Okay. Jessica?
I actually got started with beekeeping also when I was an undergraduate. I went to St. Olaf for my undergrad, and I did a study abroad program my junior year where we went to India and we all did different research projects in India. And one of the locations I could either do water quality or beekeeping. And for whatever reason, I didn't want to do water quality. And I had no, I don't know, previous experience with entomology. So I decided to do this beekeeping project and I just loved it. I mean, I still remember the first time they opened a hive for me and there were bees flying all around and I could smell like the smell of the honey and the wax coming out of the colony.
Hmm.
And it was just really magical for me and I wanted to keep going with it. And so when I got back to campus after that study abroad program was over, I actually found a way to get my own colony of honeybees on the organic farm on campus. And so I started with my own colony there and I remember getting a package of bees and like kind of terrifying my roommate with it and my friends coming out to look at it with me. And then I was just really lucky that after I graduated that I happened to be in the same state as Marla Spivak, and I applied to be a summer worker, and I just basically never left the bee lab after that. So I was a tech, and then, kind of moved on to when we started the bee squad, being a bee squad staff member, and, learned more and more about beekeeping as I went, and still here and still loving it.
Wow, you guys have quite the stories. That brings me to my next question. You're getting veterans coming from all sorts of backgrounds, different experiences. What kind of heart or life view do you need to work with bees?
Well, you need to be patient. I think patience is a very important aspect of beekeeping. I think there's this whole moving slow, but at the same time quick. At the same time, there's this rhythm into beekeeping, and I think that having an open mind to and being willing to learn about something that people have been working with for so long. You just have to have an open mind and be humble when you work with something like working like honeybees. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
I'd say you need to be able to handle kind of a big project by yourself out in the elements. You need to be kind of sturdy to do it, I think. You're out there hot days, you're getting stung if things are not going quite as planned. And you need to enjoy that. You need to be able to get up in the morning and say, I kind of can't wait to get stung today. I kind of can't wait to get the sun beaten down on me, not needing a bunch of other people to
Mhm.
help me with this project. I got to be able to handle it all by myself.
Hmm.
So you got to have to kind of be a sturdy person, I think.
And I think too, it's a mix of being really attentive to very small details. So when you're in a colony, you have to do things like look for eggs that the queen has laid to make sure that she's healthy and that the colony is healthy, looking for signs of disease. But then you also have to get a feel for the whole colony. So, is the colony bringing in nectar and pollen? Are they growing? What's the temperament of the colony? And so I think that's one thing that I've enjoyed learning over this time is just, kind of being able to both zoom in and zoom out all at once.
Yeah.
You get a feel for the whole hive.
So, how does working with bees affect the life of veterans? That transformative element, how are they affected?
Well, I think with veterans have transitioning out, and that's probably one of the most difficult parts of a veteran's life is that transition out from the military to the civilian world. Because you're coming from a brotherhood, a sisterhood, a community that's so strong, and you're coming out and you don't have that. So
Hmm.
I think that what this kind of gives is that community of someone of a group of people that have that common interest. So when I saw this program, I felt as a participant when I started, I felt like I was part of something and part of a group of people with common interests of in beekeeping. So I felt pretty comfortable on my first day at the program just
Hmm.
because we were all sharing where we served and that's what we still do today in the program. We share where we served and share those common, those common stories that we kind of have together. And yeah, there's much more, but for sure that community aspect, and
Yeah.
we talk about this all the time, how we want to make sure that every veteran that comes into this program feels that they're a part of it.
I can totally second what Josh said. On the first meeting that I was there, everyone was already kind of joking around. It felt like you were kind of among family again,
Hmm.
which I personally hadn't really felt since I got out, not in a group like that. So that was a big plus on the very first session that I helped teach. And then since then, Jess and I just got an email the other day about a technical question about someone wanting to start their own hive, and
Hmm.
so that's a good aspect of it. And we were talking to Lacey and Adam Ingrau out in Michigan, and they run a similar program that we're affiliated with, Heroes to Hives.
Yeah, I was going to
Um,
ask you about that. Yeah, what is that?
Jess, you want to answer that one? You've got like a better big picture mind than I do. Do you want to give the synopsis of their program?
Sure. Dr. Adam Ingrao is a veteran himself and a beekeeper in the UP of Michigan.
Hmm.
And he started this program called Heroes to Hives, which is basically a beekeeping training program for veterans. Because my understanding is that when he left the military, beekeeping really helped him. And so he wanted to extend that to others. And then with COVID, when his program went online, it had a huge surge in popularity. And so he went, I think, from having a couple hundred participants per year to having thousands per year. And he still runs this online beekeeping course that's very comprehensive, but then he also does his own in-person trainings. He does trainings on mindfulness, which Josh and Ben went to last year. But he also wanted to have these, other partners for the program. So he's partnering with Michigan State University, with the University of Minnesota, with other universities, so that if possible, we can provide the resources, but then also possibly be adding research into this, so looking to see, like, are there elements of this that we can kind of quantify, that we could publish about, that other people could take that model and use it elsewhere. Yeah, with Adam's help, we've really expanded the program so that we can, reach the people in Minnesota who might have taken his program, and then we can provide on-ground training for them.
Well, that's wonderful. One of the things I was struck, whenever I have guests on, I just immerse myself for weeks in everything about, I've been watching more beekeeping videos and really immersing myself in it. And when I was researching about veterans doing beekeeping, it's nationwide. It is phenomenal. But one of the things I was struck by when I was preparing like a general script, I was going to say Joshua left the Marine Corps, or Ben left the Air Force. And all across the literature that I was coming across, they're using the word transitioned. And you talked about it. And I'm a civilian. I was struck by that word, and it really impressed upon me, leaving a way of life and stepping out into what must seem chaotic as hell, civilian life, and especially during a pandemic, with those factors. So this word transitioning seems really huge, but it also seems big for someone coming into the world of beekeeping. When I watch how they slowly lift those plates, those squares out of the boxes, it's almost like watching a choreographed dance. Everything, every motion is just beautifully slow and careful and attention to detail. This world of transitioning from one way of life and having the luck or the grace to go into the world of bees and transition into their lives. It was very striking. I'd like to move into a different direction. In 2006, bees everywhere suffered a colony collapse disorder, which of course put our whole food system at risk. What is colony collapse disorder? What happened, and how do we prevent this?
Well, there are a lot of diseases that honeybees get. And to be honest, to this day, I don't think researchers fully agree on what the causes of, specifically that huge loss in 2006 was. There's a parasitic mite called Varroa that's a huge problem for all beekeepers. And that was probably a big part of it. The Varroa mite also vectors viruses. So that was a part of it. It also probably might have to do with pesticides. There's also a gut parasite called nosema that honeybees get. And so there's this huge range of health problems that honeybees have. There's probably no way to prevent something like colony collapse disorder. So even now to this day, both commercial beekeepers and hobby beekeepers lose colonies every year, every winter, sometimes as high as 50% among hobby beekeepers, because we have this mite that's just really, really bad for bees. And then the viruses that it carries are also really bad for bees. Plus, there's less forage in the landscape than there used to be. So, and it's also what's out there might be contaminated with pesticides, specifically insecticides and fungicides. So there's a lot of issues, facing the honeybee. I will say, though, that the idea that, honeybees are going to be extinct or are close to extinction is really not something we have to worry about. They're a managed species, they're livestock. And so fortunately, we have this pretty incredible commercial beekeeping system where the beekeepers are able to split their hives, they make packages. And so commercial beekeepers really support the hobbyists. So even if hobbyists are losing their colonies, they get these, splits and packages from commercial beekeepers. And actually, Josh is an ambassador for the Minnesota honey producers, so he knows a lot of the commercial beekeepers in Minnesota.
Yeah, I just want to note when it comes to foraging, right? Colony collapse, there's so many factors within colony collapse disorder. But as an agriculture teacher, I always talk about how crops like commercial crops like corn and soybeans and what are the trade-offs to that. And a lot of that is flowering crops that bees and other native bees for many years been using that as a food source, and now it's gone. So the flowerless landscape, one of the main factors, I believe, there's multiple factors for sure.
Yeah, you can kind of look at it in terms of human case. Recently, there was a government organization that said the population expectation the age expectation of U.S. citizens is finally going down. It's been going up for years and years and years, and it's starting to go down now. And some of the reasons that people are thinking that is our diet is poorer. We have less of an opportunity to get healthy foods. If you have McDonald's all day long, not to disparage McDonald's, but some sort of fast processed foods, your life expectancy is going to go down. Bees kind of have the same. It's kind of the same thing for them. They have less forage area to go and find. If they just have grass lawns or corn, like Josh was saying, they can deal with corn. There's a little bit of nutrition that they can get from corn, but not anywhere near as what they used to have 50 or 100 years ago. So you can kind of look at it as the same way as like American culture and life. You can kind of look at it the same way as bees in that colony collapse disorder idea. It's really complex, and there's a lot of different aspects of it. It's not just one thing.
It's more of a macro issue.
Indeed.
One good thing to come out of colony collapse disorder is that it really put honeybees sort of in the spotlight, and they kind of had their like cultural moment, and so there was like save the honeybee and all these things like save the bees. And in that case, like it's good that people are paying attention, not just that we have to save the honeybee, but we have all of these, the honeybees are not native to the United States, but we have all these amazing species of bumblebees and other native bees and solitary bees that really do fly under the radar. And fortunately, this push to plant more flowers, reduce pesticide use that kind of got started because people wanted to save the honeybee is also helping these native bees too. And so I think that's one of the good things to come about it, is that people, want to plant more flowers. They're okay with having messier lawns, and it's got this like cultural cachet to it, like, oh, I'm doing it to help the bees, and I think because of it being in the news and everything, it's become more acceptable to be doing things that maybe wouldn't be so aesthetically pleasing, not just having like a green manicured lawn.
See my yard right now. It's a mess.
Actually, mine is too, because I plant the white clover and monarch butterflies and bees. I can't. Okay. Anyways, I was going to ask you, the city of St. Paul has a program that if you change your lawn into pollinator gardens, they would give money towards that. And cities are doing that across the country. And Jessica, you're touching on that. I mean, one thing is to be in the cultural moment, but this seems to be lingering, where folks are not having pesticides put on their lawns anymore. And this whole worshiping at the altar of the beautiful green lawn with no dandelions, nothing, just seems to be just that, a cliche that people aren't quite buying into. Do you think this movement across the country is making a difference for bees and actually monarchs too, and different bee species? Do you think it's making a dent?
I personally think it's a little early to be able to say yes, it's making a dent. I mean, how long has, like, in Minnesota we have Lawns to Legumes program. How long has that been going for? Around 10 years or so. That seems a little bit early to tell, yes, it's really making a dent. A honeybee colony, they have like a 2-mile kind of normal kind of 2-mile radius around their hive that they'll forage from. And that's a lot of potential for, if you have say a suburban hive, that's a lot of blacktop, that's a lot of roofs, that's a lot of just Kentucky bluegrass lawn that they can't use. if we are wanting to make a difference on a personal level here, I think a lot of people would really need to add in, flowering plants to their yard into the mix. So it's good that people are doing it right now, but I think far more people need to really get on the train of helping out nature, not being quite so perfectly manicured to be able to make a difference. I don't know if Josh or Jess, you have seen any other written documents, written evidence that there's been improvement, but my opinion, it's a little early to say.
Okay.
Definitely it's made a difference so far.
I think it's going into a good direction. What just came up in my mind, I'm thinking of a lot of these companies, right? We at B Squad, we do a lot of outreach to these with companies near us. And like I said, Minnesota's a big ag state. We have General Mills out here, Land O'Lakes, a lot of these good big, their headquarters are here in Minnesota, and they have the mindset of being environmentally friendly, like many companies are. But it's, I think it comes down to giving the right information, the right guidance to be what that is, the environmentally friendly. And I think if companies are thinking this way, a lot of people are thinking that having honeybees equals good for the environment, which is not very true, because there's a lot of the management that you have to go through. So the best advice to give a lot of these companies who want to be environmentally friendly is plant flowers instead of having this grass. You don't have to have bees to be environmentally friendly, honeybees, right? Plant flowers, and you could help solve this problem that we're all have this common interest that we all have, right?
Yeah.
Like Ben said, honeybees can fly 2 miles from their hive. And so they have a huge, radius of area that they can go forage in. But native bees, solitary bees, bumblebees have a much smaller radius. And so, if you want to impact the species and the organisms living in your own neighborhood, you can provide a lot of food for a bumblebee colony or a solitary bee, because they don't need to collect 100 pounds of honey to make it through the winter like a honeybee colony does. They just need enough food to make it through the summer. They need to provision their nests with pollen, have enough nectar to be able to have energy. And so, yeah, I mean, I think if people have flowers in their yards, even if they have a small city yard, yeah, maybe they're not helping like the overall nationwide bee population, but I think, there is like localized effects. So, you can have more bees, especially native bees and solitary bees and bumblebees in your area by getting together with your neighbors, agreeing not to use pesticides, not, planting more flowers. 2 summers ago, I saw a rusty patch bumblebee on plants in my yard. And so the rusty patch bumblebee is an endangered species. It's our state bee. And I was really excited. And I had never seen one in my yard before. And I sent a picture to all my neighbors because, I mean, really, it's a group success story. The fact that as a block and as a little neighborhood, like, nobody's really spraying, everybody's planting lots of stuff, people are leaving some like brushy areas, and so it couldn't have been just my yard hosting them. Who knows where they were living, but it had to have been, us as a neighborhood doing that together.
Wonderful. I like that community aspect of it too. I mean, that's really important. I'd like to come back to the veterans for a moment. Army veteran Eric Grandin, who had multiple deployments in Iraq and is now a beekeeper, said, quote, "It's like the military. It's so systematic. There's such harmony in the hive, just like a unit. Everyone's on the same mission and has the same focus." What are your thoughts about that?
In the military, everyone has a job, and you got to do your job, for the mission's sake. So, I could definitely see that when you open up a hive and you could see all the honeybees working, and you break down all the work, all the different jobs that all these worker bees are doing, starting from when they're very young, and how that changes. It's like in the military, our job kind of changes when we start out and we get into different levels, just like honeybees. The division of labor is what I'm coming out with that quote.
It's actually a pretty good match. I don't know if you know, but I mean, there are different hives that the ladies perform. There are some bees that are better suited to going to collecting water. There's some bees that really have a penchant to go collect propolis, plant resins. There are some after a certain time, I'm now the guard bee. So they get kind of a certain age. The young bees, they're nurse bees. So yeah, each of the kind of different age classes, and then they think it's genetic predispositions form different jobs within it, and it is kind of working like a military unit. And I don't know. I don't know if I've ever actually thought about it that way, but it is something I kind of appreciate coming from the military background, that they are relatively, they all have the same mission. It is relatively regimented, and you have certain tasks that need to get done. I don't know. I'm kind of a task-based person, and that fits with me pretty well.
Once a veteran completes this program, do they continue with bees? Do you see that?
Our Bee Veterans Program is unique in its own way, and there's no completion towards it. There's not an end goal towards it. We try to provide something every single year, no matter how many times you went to a course. Everybody's always welcome. Veterans are welcome to come in every single year, and they could pick however it's flexible for them. We try to make it flexible for veterans and really just try to establish that community that never goes away. The more veterans that come through, I feel like more and more veterans are just trying to get the grasp of things and start their own hive, in which we have many veterans who tend to do that. And my hope is to see veterans choose it as careers, maybe, and get into commercial beekeeping or products and start their own honey lines. And, as an ag educator, that's like my biggest motivator for myself, is trying to have students see these opportunities within agriculture. So same thing with the Bee Vets program. Is I hope to show these opportunities to veterans within products and commercial beekeeping.
Josh, do you want to talk about the field trip that we're going to do this year?
Yeah, so going back to how we're trying to figure out better ways to improve the program. So this upcoming summer, we have a tour happening at our commercial beekeepers to show how that looks and that process in a large scale. A lot of our veterans have not seen beekeeping at the commercial scale. I hope that brings them those interests, those like students, right? When they see it, when they're there, they get these feelings of just wanting to pursue it even more when you see it with your own eyes. So we hope to do that here this summer coming up.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Yet again, another aspect of this world of bees. That's awesome. So I'm going to ask you guys, what is the most remarkable part of the Bee Veterans Program? What would you say?
I would say it's the community. It's the network. One thing that I really love seeing is that some of our bee vets started to volunteer at our Minnesota State Fair, in the honey tasting area, in the education area, right, of the horticulture building, which has a lot of history with the University of Minnesota. As the Minnesota Honey Producers Association ambassador, I was able to see that. I was at the state fair almost every single day this last year, and I saw our veterans participating and volunteering their time to talk about bees to the public. So it just brings in not just the bee vets opening these doors of just networking and a bigger community.
Yeah.
So I think that's when I saw it, I was like, this is why I do it, to bring veterans together to establish a strong community and staying within. Hopefully it grows.
One aspect that I find particularly intriguing about the program is, Jess mentioned that Josh and I went to Adam and Lacey's retreat this last summer, and Lacey is a transpersonal psychologist.
I'd like to jump in here and let listeners know that transpersonal psychology focuses on mind-body connection, blending traditional concepts like behaviorism and humanism with philosophy, mindfulness, and mysticism.
And we learned a fair number of what I think she called transpersonal beekeeping. So it was, in essence, slow motion beekeeping to kind of keep maybe areas of your memories, your thoughts that give you trouble, and you focus specifically on what you're doing. We instituted some of those practices this last season, and we got really positive feedback about this slow motion, mindful beekeeping aspect of it, because there seemed to be some good feedback. And I think plan on doing that this upcoming season.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with these guys on that. We have a lot of classes at the university that are, specifically beekeeping management classes that are really about the nitty-gritty, how do you test for mites? How do you split your colony? How do you look for diseases? That kind of thing. And we do touch on that in the bee vets classes, but a lot of it is just to provide a really, joyful, interesting experience for people that are interested in learning more about bees. So we
Mhm.
don't even necessarily have the goal to teach these people to be independent beekeepers, because that's a whole other course, that takes a long time. I kind of think of it as like, I remember how amazing I thought it was the first time I opened a colony. And we just want to, let people have this experience to be like outside on a beautiful day and see this amazing
Yeah.
superorganism, learn more about this like really cool creature. And then if they're interested in becoming a beekeeper themselves, that's awesome. We can offer more resources and point them in the right direction. But it's also kind of like you know, we don't have an expectation that they're going to have to take this on. And if they
Yeah.
want to, they can, or they could just come enjoy it with us.
I guess we're talking about the effects of this program on other people. And as we finish out the hour here, I want to ask, how has this program affected you?
For me, I think it's a big part of it. I've always been someone who's always thinking about relationships, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons why I ended up becoming a teacher at the high school level. But community networking, relationships has been a big part of how I live my life, because I'm not here, the things I've done by myself. It's always been the people around me. And I tell this to my students all the time: build your network, build these positive relationships, build these, relationships within your community, because this is what helps us reach to what we want to do
Yeah.
and be. So personally, I think it has fit well for me, because I get to keep that military experience with me now, wherever I go still, because of this BVETS program. So that's what kind of really impacted me the
Mhm.
most with this program, being around veterans and building that community with them.
I absolutely mirror Josh there. We do these classes. We have been doing the classes on Sundays, which is, outside of the kind of normal work week. During the summertime, we're busy, busy, busy. We work long days to get all the bee work done. And come Sunday, I'm still excited about going in to work again. It's fantastic to meet these groups of people that we've been working with. Mira and Josh there. It's fantastic to meet with our brothers and sisters, even though we're out of that part of our lives. It's good to be around everyone again, even if it's only once a month.
I mean, I'm basically a full-time beekeeper. That's what I spend most of my time doing in the summer.
Wow.
But that also means that I focus a lot of times on what's going wrong with colonies. So I'm like
Mhm.
sampling for mites, testing for disease, that kind of thing. And so I love that we have this class that it's just more about like a bee appreciation and community. And I like working with Josh and Ben, and enjoy working with the veterans. And yeah, it's just a fun experience.
Wow, you guys, thank you, Ben, Jessica, and Joshua, for being here. And I have to say, big respect for each of you for the important work that you do with bees, the Bee Vets program, your passion to maintain this ecosystem of bees. Oh my God, I could listen to you guys for hours. Thank you for sharing your expertise. And thank you, listeners, for joining us today. If you've enjoyed Fill to Capacity, tell your friends and subscribe. Thank you, everyone. Bye.